This is part 2 of my conversation with Kimberly Small, the Executive Director of IASB. If you missed the first episode, you can go back and listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or your podcast player of choice. You're listening to Inside IASB, a podcast series dedicated to informing and encouraging Illinois School Board members. I remember we did some training a while back talking about the buy-in factor for changes and how there's like a quadrant graph of like there's buy-in and then do you remember what I'm talking about?
I'm drawing a blank. Yeah.
Man, this was like maybe 2 years ago, but essentially.
Oh yeah, it was what year 4. Perhaps.
Yeah.
Jeff Henderson.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yes.
It was essentially talking like you can have all these changes. Some people are really gung ho for change, but the people who aren't, you just need to get buy-in with them, and they're willing to do it. They just need to have some assurances essentially, or some guidance about how to navigate these attachments and things.
Absolutely. Because sometimes when the change occurs, is this going to impact, will I still have a job here? That's a real thing for an employee. Mm-hmm. Or will I still have the same duties, tasks, and responsibilities? And so, we're all human beings, and mm-hmm. we all come from a different space with different lived experiences. So it's important to recognize that. And that's the same with our members as well. They all come from a different lived experience and have different attachments to the things that we offer them as an organization.
Yeah, totally agree. We've talked about how changes can bring about innovation, and balancing continuity versus innovation can be really tricky. So how do you manage to maintain existing practices, but also being willing to introduce new ideas?
So that's a really great question. And I've thought about this one. I wonder, because I've been here for as long as I have, if I may have a little bit more latitude or a bigger license from staff to mm-hmm. move the ship. When I was talking with staff in my first 100 days and the one-on-ones, a big theme emerged, and I showed everybody in May that graphic. It was a Wordle of the same words that popped up, and one was like smooth sailing, mm-hmm. steer the ship, make the hard decisions. And I think I've had some latitude to be able to introduce new ideas a little bit more quickly because I've had a longer tenure here. But I want to tell you a story about boats.
Okay.
So this whole theme of steering the ship, a boat has a keel and that helps it balance. Mm-hmm. And I tried something new with my husband, and he's probably going to be like, "Oh, Kimberly, why did you share this story?" But it's actually something that's been shared here at work. So it's not a big secret, but I was out in the Northeast in Rhode Island in Providence, and I thought, James, my husband, he always plans trips and he mm-hmm. always plans all the activities. He loves doing that. And so that's great for me. But I thought, I'm going to do something nice and I'm going to plan something. So I planned a gondola ride.
Wow.
But this was in October. Oh. And so a nor'easter came through, and I kept watching and I didn't tell him what we were doing. So this was a surprise. Mm-hmm. So I kept watching all day. Are they going to cancel? I'm hoping they cancel because it's really, really windy.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So we went on this gondola ride, mm-hmm. and we got blown around. Like, I was nervous, and both my husband and I are really good swimmers. So if we would have went in, fine, I know what to do. Wouldn't have been happy about it in a coat, but, as we were getting blown around, you could tell that the two guys that were running this excursion were nervous. I could tell they were not sure what to do, which then, of course, translated into nervousness for myself and my husband. And in the middle of this, he says, "This boat doesn't have a keel." And, gondolas already kind of lean to one side because they're not symmetrical. And that was really nerve-wracking. We did not fall out of the boat. Good. We made it back and it was fine. And now I have a great story to tell, mm-hmm. but you don't want to do that with an organization. No. I look at myself as the keel here and the balance. And so while I have that latitude, I've still got to be the keel and keep the balance. And so this year, we've talked a lot about shifting our strategic plan. We had 6 E's. And in May, we talked about how those are going to shift. They're not going to go away, but we talked about how we're going to shift and have that focus on engagement this year. And with that focus on engagement, we came up with 3 different areas: our division leaderships, leadership events and training. That's one bucket. The second bucket is focusing on our conference and making that the best it can be. Not that it's bad, but we can grow there too. And then our website access, where our members come and they can find things when they're searching, help them better find things when they're searching, and better register for the online learning center courses that are there. And that all came from staff. We engaged in a high-low exercise. You probably remember doing it.
Yeah.
And I think communications probably did it differently than governmental relations, and governmental relations different than policy services. So every department looked at what's high value and low effort, or low value and high effort, so that we can better focus where the value is to our members. And so that's where these 3 buckets for engagement came from this year. So I guess that's how I managed to maintain the existing practices. We maintained the E's. It's not that evolving and empowering are going to go away, but we can't evolve or empower if we aren't engaged. So that logically comes first. And the other E's related to education and excellence and equity. Those are things, as you've heard me say, that we do. They're part of our mission. We're going to do those every day, no matter what, because that's why we're here. And so that's how I kept the balance with the innovation and the shifts. Tried to, not flip the gondola, in the river during a nor'easter storm.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm glad that there's a good balance between keeping kind of what's known, but introducing new things. Because I feel like if you lean too heavily one way or another, if everything's brand new, it's kind of like, it was all my work for nothing. It's all been wiped clean. We're doing something else. But if you stay too rigid and don't change anything, you just kind of fear going stale or going dated. So it's a good strategy to keep up, but knowing where that, like we've been talking about, where that balance is of what's too much, what's too little is, it's kind of a bit of a trial and error thing.
It is. It is. And again, with how people are on that spectrum of change and shifts, for some people, the boat may be tipping. They may feel like I did, and in the river where like, whoa, I'm going to fall overboard here. And so we have to really, really work on that balance. And when people are feeling that way, be able to speak up so we can give those resources and support and get the ship right again.
Completely agree. Reflecting on your first year some more, are there any success stories or milestones that stand out that make you particularly proud?
So I have a question for you on that. Do you want personal, professional, or both?
I think we could go for both. I think it'd be good to hear both sides.
Okay. Well, I will tell you personally, my husband and I were married for 25 years in May. So that was a huge milestone. Yeah, thank you. And he retired. He was an air traffic controller, and he worked for 26 years, the last 21 and a half of them at O'Hare Tower. So he was ready to just pause and, have a shift in his life.
Yeah, for sure.
So he retired, and I'm really excited and proud of him for his career and excited for what comes next for him. And my son, Jonah, is an apprentice electrician in Minnesota. And he is about ready to sit for his journeyman exam. So he's passed all of his testing, and he's got a couple more hours left, and he can sit for that test and move forward as a licensed electrician. And then my daughter graduated from college this year.
Wow.
So we've had a lot in our family going on this year.
That is a lot, yeah.
And she's going to be a second grade teacher up in the western suburbs of Chicago this fall.
That's great.
Yeah. So the last thing that I'm just amazed by is that my parents were married for 50 years back in March. And that's just an amazing accomplishment in today's world. And the one thing I'm really proud of myself for keeping is this Tuesday call with mom. If you look at my calendar, it says mom call. We've had to move the day here or there. And sometimes I've had to do it while I've been on the road to division meetings.
Yeah.
But I've kept that call with my mom. Sometimes my dad will poke his head in because he's an avid fisherman. And so if he's not fishing on the Mississippi River, he'll poke his head into the call too. But when I was at Northwestern doing my studies, they talked about how your calendar is a moral statement. What is on there is a moral statement. And that gave me pause to think about, you need to carve that time for your family. Back to my story about my godfather passing away. Sometimes we forget those things,
sure,
but it's important to keep your family and your friends really close. So back to the professional, I have 3 major things,
Great.
but these are not all inclusive. There's a lot of great things, including this podcast that are going on at IASB. And I really am proud of everyone. But 3 major things that have been big shifts this year. First is our GR team, governmental relations. We call them GR for the members who don't know what that acronym is. And they've just transformed relationships with our external partner organizations and the members of the General Assembly. And during this past session, they implemented our advocacy ambassadors program. Mm-hmm. They'd been working on that last year, and we really got it implemented and some deep roots happening, and it's really grown. And one of the things they were able to do was educate legislators about the pros and cons of different bills that were being introduced. And one of their successes was there was a bill related to students who were serving as school board members being able to attend closed session, basically having the same rights as an elected school board member. And the team did a lot of education about why that may not be as great as it sounds. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, the Advocacy Ambassadors program was able to get that paused to have further conversations, which was a great thing. So that was a great win by that team.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing I wanted to talk about was our areas of focus. I talked about those in the other question, just getting those established with the leadership team and getting staff thought and buy-in as we developed those so that staff knew and understood and felt part of that process. So getting to those 3 major buckets on engagement, the division events, leadership and training, the joint annual conference, and our website, that was a huge accomplishment as well. And we did that with some help from our national organization, the Consortium of State School Board Associations, COSBA. We brought in a consultant and it was successful. And I'm really proud of the team for working through that process and coming up with those areas of focus. Mm-hmm. And then last, the structure of our field and equity services department has changed. Yeah, that's been a big change. And when I spoke one-on-one with the staff about what could be improved, this theme emerged about how equity services and field services was a hard marriage, so to speak, just competing interests, and the work wasn't always necessarily aligned. And so I wanted that team to speak with another team that wasn't connected to IASB at all. Yeah. And so I also used the Consortium of State School Board Association member executive directors. There was a team of 4 of them that came into the Lombard office, and the Springfield team traveled to Lombard, and they had a day where the exec directors spoke with that team to talk through what makes sense, what is working and what is not. And then they provided a report, and I compared that to what I learned in one-on-ones and then made the decision to shift departments. So the end of that process, the decision was equity services will move into the office of exec director. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Services. And we have a specific director dedicated to that. And then we also moved executive searches to a seat on our administrative team because we want to preserve the superintendent lens in our leadership team. It's a really important collaborative relationship between a board and a superintendent, right? So the other thing that we changed is we renamed field services to outreach, training, and events. And so we merged field services with board development and meetings management, and we renamed all three of those departments within that outreach, training, and events umbrella. So field services is going to become outreach and training. Board development will now become training development, and meetings management will become events management. And the renaming, it was an opportune time to do that as well with the different merges that we decided to do. And the renaming is for clarity on what roles and responsibilities are and what each bucket within that major outreach, training, and events department does.
Yeah, that is a lot of changes and updates, but lots of great things to be proud of. And it's just in 1 year, that's quite an accomplishment for just how much the association's evolved in that time, and just those new connections, especially with the GR example. That's really cool to hear. So it's really neat to hear how the association is evolving to meet the needs of our members just everywhere in all aspects.
Yeah, it's exciting. And like I said, those were the top three I wanted to talk about today. I could take a whole day, but I don't think our members want to have an 8-hour podcast because there are a lot of other really great things that people will see coming out of the association as well.
Yeah.
And lots of evolution happening. It's exciting.
Totally. I'm very excited to see member response to all those changes and updates. And since assuming your role, how has your leadership style changed?
So I feel like when I go back to my leadership values and my statement, I try to keep that steady because I feel it's really important for staff and the board of directors and our members to know what they're going to get each day. But one thing I am working hard on, I've learned this year that as general counsel and leading a team of lawyers and policy team members, there's a certain language that they speak. And I suppose in any field, there's a certain language that you get used to speaking. And so then when you move to leading a lot of different areas, you have to learn to change your communication style. So I had the privilege of being able to say, go do X, Y, and Z. And after 7 years of being general counsel, the team would know what I meant by that. But I have to reestablish that with the leadership team and the admin team and make sure that I'm clear so that people feel successful and that we're all accountable to serving the members. So that's the thing that I'm working on right now is just communication so people feel successful and that we're accountable. And as we move into this year, the entire staff will be working on accountability so that we can have those conversations with each other, between departments or between colleagues, and feel successful that we're getting things done to serve the members well.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that cutting down on as much jargon as possible is always good because it clears the lines of communication and things don't get confused or lost in translation. Because if you start using acronyms everywhere, it's like some acronyms mean very different things to very different people.
They do. And education is full of them. And I know other industries have them too. And we are starting, one thing I really enjoyed in college learning about language was just how it's evolved. You know, hieroglyphics were symbols and now we've got grammar and syntax, but now it's interesting how we're moving back to emojis and acronyms meaning a whole sentence. So.
Yeah, it is very interesting. My final question for you is looking ahead, what are your top priorities and goals for the association in the upcoming years?
Well, the first one is our areas of focus for our engagement, strategic priority. And I really want our members to know and understand that this year we're working on training our division leaders about what serving in a division means, and making sure that those leaders have the resources that they need and the training they need within their divisions. And we're working on providing great events in our divisions this year. And then that second bucket is our joint annual conference. You're going to see kiddos with, we're going to have some music performances. We just want to bring back kids so our members see the results of the decisions that they're making at the board table and how that impacts the kids in Illinois. And then with our website, we talked about that a little bit, that third bucket, just making sure that we get that updated so that it's more user friendly and our members are better able to find what they're looking for and register for classes. So that'll be a major area of focus this year. Yes. I think we've been aggressive with our goals, and I think I'm really excited about our leadership team. I think the people around the table there have really great ideas, and the right people are there, and it's really energizing for me to listen to everyone's ideas. And it is a little bit of an aggressive team with goals, and that's okay with me. I think the energy and the synergy is there to move forward and to meet these goals.
Yeah, looking at this list, it's very cool and exciting to see. I'm biased because I work a lot with the website too, and with our recently launched community website, we're really excited to get more member engagement and just get the voices of our members to us as easily as possible, so they can congregate and have good discussions about what's working in their divisions and how they can help one another. That kind of social aspect, I'm really excited to see how that goes. Yeah,
I'm excited about those online communities too. They were, I know, a lot of work to set up, and that again is a shift, right? For our members, it will be a behavioral change where they can come in and network with each other. And I'm excited to see how that plays out this year as well.
I do too. Well, thank you, Kimberly, again for coming on the podcast and talking about your first year as executive director. Yes. It's been exciting to hear your reflective thoughts, and really looking forward to many upcoming years to come.
Yes, Isaac, thank you for inviting me, and it was a joy to be with you this morning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the podcast, and thank you for your dedicated volunteer service to public education. If you'd like to stay up to date with future episodes, please consider following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube Music. Have a comment or question? We welcome listener feedback and invite you to leave us a voicemail via the link in the description, or send us a voicemail at communications@iasb.com. Thanks.